Welcome to our current next installment of the IATBP Fireside Chats. Apologies for the little bit of glare that I've got going on my camera. I can't seem to fix it. I was going to go ahead and invite our guests. It looks like one of them's already in the audience. Hey, Nate. Actually, since you're already there, if you want to just hit request to join, I can add you, and we can just get started from there. I'm going to try and add my co-host Sufeng here. Let me see. All right, where is co-host? Huh. Yeah, I can't seem to find him. Where is he? Yeah, I don't see a request from you, so I'm just gonna go ahead and add you. I'm gonna hit invite. Oh, it's not letting me invite you. Send me the invite too, please. Not seeing where I can join. It's very strange. Yeah, I'm trying to send you the invite, Nate, but the button is like blocked out. Are you on your phone, updated version of Instagram, following us on Instagram? No issues? Because it's not letting me invite you, actually. Yeah, I got a request from Sufeng. Um, I'm adding them now. Very strange. Oh, looks like it's going to be one of those days with technical difficulties. Awesome. Hey Sufeng, I've been accepting your request for a minute now. It's not adding you. I'm not sure what's going on there. There we go. I got two requests now.
There we go.
There we go. I got one. Now I gotta get, I got
Hey.
both. It's always a battle with Instagram trying to get our guests on time. Awesome. All right. Well, I was doing a little bit of an intro before we hit our technical difficulties there. So I'll just jump back into that. This is our next installment of the IATBP Fireside Chats. Thank you everybody who's already in the audience, ready to go. I'm going to introduce our co-host and our guest here in a second, but just before we jump into the conversation, I do want to preface this by telling everybody about our competition that's going to be happening on November 23rd in Atlanta, Georgia. Nate, are you competing in that? I haven't checked.
Yeah, I am going to be competing in it. I already signed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Then I just haven't like checked recently or something,
Yeah,
but
you're good.
that's great.
It was just like a week
Awesome.
before.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we've got our competition in Atlanta, Georgia, November 23rd. Nate, who's on here today, is going to be competing there, which is exciting. And if you're interested in competing, registration's still open, so you can actually go on our website, become a member, and register to compete. And if you enjoy our conversation today, you get something out of it. But even if you're not planning to compete with us, you can actually support what we're doing here and the series like this, other programs similar to the Fireside Chats, by just becoming a member for $49 a year. So that's the same process as if you want to compete. You just go on our website and become a member. All right, I think that's everything. I see Siufeng is like tired and nodding over there in the corner. It's midnight for you in Hong Kong, right?
Yes, I had a pretty long day today, but I'm very excited of, our conversation today. So now, I'll give it back to you, for introducing Nate.
Absolutely. Yeah. So obviously, like Siu-Feng said, my name's Nat. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of the IATBP. We've got Siu-Feng here. My co-host is on the board of the IATBP, and has a million other incredible accolades, right? IFBB Pro Bodybuilder and PhD student, and the list goes on and on. And we get to talk today to Nate Bornio, Coach Nate Bornio, who actually competed with us last year at our powerlifting meet in Atlanta, and I believe took first place in the Masc II Division, if I recall
Yeah.
correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to give you a little bit more about Nate, if you didn't read the bio that we posted on Instagram, so besides competing with us, Nate is also a coach at, I want to say it's pronounced Flambeaux
Yeah,
Fit.
that's
Is
right.
that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. In Louisiana. I was like worried about the
No, yeah,
pronunciation
you're good.
there a
It's like
lot.
it's a torch that usually people march in parades with. It's the big flames, and usually they have fire dancers. It's a very cultural name, and it also winds up being good for letting people know that we're a little bit fruity too. So,
Okay. Cool, awesome. Oh
hmm
shit, I didn't know that. That's
hmm
cool. Yeah, so Coach Nate coaches at Flambeau Fit in Louisiana, and besides that, I think you are an
yeah,
NSCA-CPT, and you graduated. I think your degree was in
hmm
Kinesiology, Fitness, Human Performance, correct?
correct. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then something aside from that, we're going to jump into talking about at some point the meet that you hosted this
Mm,
year, which we're also very, very curious
yeah,
about how that went.
I'm excited to talk about it.
So, yeah. So that's a little bit about Nate. And let's go ahead and just jump into getting to know you a little bit before getting to know kind of like the work and what you've been
hmm
doing. So we always kick off our conversations with our guests by asking uh, two kind of interlocking questions. One is what got you interested in lifting and specifically powerlifting, which is the sport you compete in, and then eventually competing,
hmm
stuff like that. And how did that journey with getting into lifting and powerlifting and competing coincide with your self-discovery as a trans person? Like, did one influence the
Yeah.
other? Anything like that?
So, my intro to lifting, I actually started working out at Planet Fitness in high school, but before then, I had been doing Taekwondo. I wound up doing it for like 5 years. I was like from I can't remember. I was early tweens, going in from 8 to 10, but I wound up being a second degree black belt, so I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed being a part of something regular and community and active. I did a little bit of softball whenever I got into junior high, but then in high school, I didn't really have that outlet, and everything's changing. I was honestly struggling a lot my freshman year with depression and figuring myself out. And then that summer, I got my first girlfriend, and it was a whole thing. And then that sophomore year, I I really needed an outlet that was physical again. And so I started working out at Planet Fitness, and I decided that junior year I wanted to try out for our powerlifting team at Slidell High. And I did, and I made it. And it was really exciting because I felt like I was good at it right away. I was naturally really, really strong, and it was just learning technique and building up everything. And I love just being a part of that team again. Um, the didn't do too much my first year, my junior year, but then by my senior year, I was getting first place. I won best lifter at our regional meets. I had the option to to jump down a weight class. I competed as a super heavyweight, but I didn't want to go to the 220 weight class because I would have won it too easily. So I fought the good fight at my state competition my senior year, but I didn't wind up winning. The other girl that was competing went and broke every single state record. So kudos to her. But coming out of that, I was really excited, and I wanted to continue it through college. So I was at the UL, University of Louisiana at Lafayette, powerlifting team for just a little bit, but I had to make a decision at some point because, well, the college level competes with the USAPL, and they don't allow transgender athletes at all in any regard. They say that they're not they're not exclusionary, but you can't do it. And so I had my appointment to start testosterone that summer after my first year of college, but then I got a call and they said, hey, we have an appointment in January. Do you want to get started? and I took the leap. And so from then, it felt like my powerlifting career was kind of over in a sense, as far as competing. I felt like I had to make a choice between, starting my transition and feeling like my true self and actually doing competitive powerlifting. And I had heard about the IATBP shortly after, but then next year I got top surgery. I was intending on competing in 2020, and then, 20, the pandemic happened. And so it was really invigorating and refreshing to be able to compete again for the first time since high school last year with the IATBP. I can't stress enough how much having that space, even though, it's been small, I think it's going to grow bigger and bigger. I just love this world and I love sharing it with people. So it's just as much a part of my transition and finding out who I am and what I love to do as anything else has been in my life.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's incredible.
You are like being able to like sum up your life story
Yeah.
like in 3 minutes. Like I'm very impressed.
Well, I don't
But
I don't
also,
mind I don't mind sharing it. So I've had some practice in reducing down the detail. I have ADHD. I can go on tangents. So
yeah, no. You give us an opportunity to ask you more questions.
Right,
That's the
exactly.
smart part of it.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just a follow-up. Like my first follow-up is, do you think actually, a transitioning itself or knowing about your gender identity, does that confuse you more in terms of like how you approach, powerlifting itself, or does it make more sense to you? Because powerlifting is more like something about strength, right? So I asked this question because I have been doing a lot of other sports before I did bodybuilding, and then when I did bodybuilding, I was like, oh, that made much more sense, right?
Yeah.
The visual part of bodybuilding, for instance, makes me realize that, oh, this is, I have a certain ideal body that I have been chasing after, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of coincide with how I see myself, right? Does powerlifting do something similar to you?
I think so, because I think having a strong body is just bettering your relationship with your body, I think has been the biggest thing that powerlifting has done for me. Like, yes, getting bigger muscles and feeling more masculine and everything is, awesome and affirming, but it's more of I'm building that trust with myself and I'm building that trust with my body and getting comfortable in my skin when, as trans people, for most of our lives, or until we get to the point where we can transition in the way that we want, we have a lot of discomfort with our own bodies. And so being able to have an outlet that grounds me and brings me back to my body and shows me all the ways that it can be good rather than all the ways that I felt that it was bad, and I
Mm.
love getting to share that with other people too.
So how does that, is there, for you, is there a difference between, so you have been like doing different types of sports, right? So you did Taekwondo earlier and then you do softball as well, right? So you have like experience of doing like, individual sports and team sports, and then going back to like powerlifting, which is, I'm not sure, powerlifting is a very interesting sport. It's individual when it comes to lifting, but it seems like it's also a very community, it's also very much of a team sport as well.
Yeah.
So, comparing the experiences of different sports that you have played, do you find yourself like more interested in like more individual type of sport or more like, team sport itself?
I think that powerlifting is kind of like the perfect intersection, at least for me,
Right.
because especially, that experience of me lifting in high school with a team, getting to bond with a team, getting to work with other people toward a common goal, but knowing that your work is going to be the one that gets your result. With competing in high school, you divvy up between weight classes and you score points for your team, so that does wind up being like a team winner. Like if you get first place, it's 3 points, for example, and 2 and 1 point for third. And so it's the idea of doing the best you can for yourself, but also contributing to the team and becoming the best version of yourself alongside other people which is just such a great appeal. So, and which is, I'm hoping that, especially this year with the IATBP meet, maybe there can be some cross intersection. I am going to be bringing some folks from Flambeaux who are going to be competing at the IATBP meet as well, and we're kind of training as a team, and it's bringing up a lot of, you know, the warm fuzzy feelings, and other people are getting really
Yeah.
excited about it too, and really enjoying getting to work out together. And it's just like it we can't, I love competing on an individual level, but we can't get away from the fact that we're just such communal species, and that we need each other to be the best versions of ourselves, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes very much
Mhm.
sense. Then Nat, do you have something to add?
No, it's just I definitely I see that like whenever we go to the powerlifting meets. I mean, technically it's an individual sport
Mhm.
the same way bodybuilding is, but as Sifan always points out, you see even the competitors, like even though they're competing against each other, and
Mhm.
like, you know, if that person deadlifts that weight, they're gonna beat you.
Mhm.
You're still cheering them on, you know,
Yeah,
like you still want them
yeah,
to lift the
yeah,
weight.
exactly.
You get that in powerlifting to the point where it does feel like a team sport, even though it's not
Mhm.
technically a team
Yeah,
sport,
even the
you know?
people you're going against, you know, because at the end of
Yeah,
the day, like, you should want everybody to bring their absolute best to the table, and yours to be the absolute best, you know.
right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I
oh,
think
sorry,
this
go
is
ahead, Stephen.
something that I really, oh, sorry. Yes, I was like, this is something I really love about powerlifting
Hmm.
because, I always hope that bodybuilding can do something similar. Bodybuilding to a certain extent is also that intersection, right? Because
Hmm.
individually, you are the only person who go on stage, but, usually you have a team or at least someone beside
Hmm.
you, whether helping you with, just taking your bags,
Yeah.
bringing your meals, right, or helping you with some tanning stuff, right? Versus but then you don't really see that cheering and that sense of community, I guess, in bodybuilding as much as in powerlifting. So I'm always really envy. I always
Hmm.
envy like, powerlifters. Oh, I was like, I hope, in a bodybuilding show one day we will see more of that, just, sharing the
Yeah.
joy of lifting and, being together.
Hmm.
So I definitely see. And then, you are someone who also, being experienced competing, and then you bring in, people who live with
Yeah,
you,
Hmm.
and then,
yeah,
you join the same competition. I think
Yeah.
that's an amazing thing that you're doing. We'll come back to that really
Yeah.
more later. Um, I think, I have a slightly different
Hmm.
question, regarding, you talk about, very briefly about, the transition, and then you do top surgery, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So there's a lot of controversies and discussions surrounding, because, for example, powerlifting and other types of strength sports, right? People who are, first of all, it's like, oh, trans women because they were assigned male at birth, right?
Hmm.
And so if they compete in the women's division, they have that physiological advantage,
Hmm.
and quote unquote.
yeah,
And on the contrary, like trans men, who are on like testosterone will actually have physiological advantages over cisgender
Hmm.
women, right? If they compete in the female division. So, what are your views on like how on the effects of testosterone
Hmm.
in general? Do you feel like that really helps you in terms of your lifting and in general your performance in powerlifting?
So to touch a little bit on the first part of what you were saying about, like, the fairness in sport and everything,
Hmm.
I think it boils down to, I guess, my thoughts of this have evolved over the years. I first and foremost think that we absolutely need to be doing more research on trans people and trans athletes.
yeah,
The studies that we do have are really short. I think the longest one was like of 2 years, and it showed like a small pool of trans people, and it was through like a hand grip strength test. But it got some interesting data that, near the first year, trans men become similar in strength to, at least in that particular measure, to cis men, their cis counterparts.
mhm,
And for trans women, it seems to take a little bit longer. But regardless, I think at one point I used to feel like, oh, well, we just have to find where the cross intersection point and say that, you know, trans women need to be on estrogen or whatever for a certain amount of time. But I think the conversation is a lot more nuanced than that. Yes, that needs to happen, and we need to learn more about trans athletes and trans people, because I finished a degree in kinesiology, and never in my 6 years that it took me to get that degree, I'd started off with some other majors first. I had never heard about trans people. So we need to be in textbooks. We need to be more understood and more studied and talked about.
Yeah.
But oftentimes when we are talking about fairness in women's sport in particular, it's not people who are really vested in and interested in women's sport. You know, they couldn't tell you anything else about women's sport. And when we're talking about athletes competing on the elite level, you know, especially with like the Olympics or like world competitions and everything like that, we're already such a small portion of the population. You know, we're not going to go out and sweep everything. But also, athletes elite athletes are physiologically different. They're there in that position, you know, but they have all the tallest people in basketball. They have all of the short and stocky people doing weightlifting. You know, it's our bodies have an advantage naturally, whether or not we're born male or female for certain sports in the first place.
It's almost like sports self-select for people who are like best designed for that sport.
Exactly. And it's just kind of something that naturally happens, because once you get to a certain level, it's the people with those advantages are going to be the ones that win, you know? And so what really started changing my mind about this, I was actually, before, it was 2 years ago, I think, I had the opportunity to speak on a panel at the National Communications Association here in New Orleans that was having a conversation about trans inclusion in sport. And one of the other people on the panel with me, she was, I think her name's Anna Osborne. She's like a professor at Syracuse University. Made that point to me, you know, and it's changed a lot how I've seen trans sports and also been aware of that conversation, because it can be really, really overwhelming and daunting as a trans athlete right now. We're already like don't have a lot of numbers behind us, but it feels like the whole world is looking at us, that there's like a target on us right now as far as you know, just in general. And so I'm kind of starting to ramble, because it's just it's hard to talk about, you know. It's a challenging world to live in. I think that it'll come with time, and it'll come with our persistence and our growth and our, you know, advocacy and making these and getting people interested in showing that this is something that we can do, and not letting those negative voices win over that conversation to make us feel like, oh yes, these trans women do actually have a physiological advantage, when it's probably the answer is always going to be a lot more nuanced than either of the talking points are going to try and make it, you know. As far as like my experience with testosterone, oh my gosh, I definitely, so my training hasn't been like very, very consistent. Honestly, I can attribute a lot of that to starting at Flambeaux. I actually started coaching here as my internship for my last semester, finishing up my kinesiology degree. And the reason why I chose this place in particular is I remember hearing about Flambeaux opening in high school because the owner, Dylan, is a trans man. And it made some, you know, buzz in the local queer magazines and stuff like that. And I was like, that is so cool. Like, I want to be a part of that. And getting the opportunity to do this as my internship and to stay on as a coach has just been amazing. But I feel like this has been the most consistent that I've been in my training. And I'm starting to see growth that feels like it should. You know what I mean? Like, I was always comparing myself to my numbers that I was able to do pre-testosterone. Which I was also equipped and, you know, training for only a short period of time, but getting in the rhythm and being around a supportive community and being around that other people, I think is what allowed me to start to see, I'm like, oh, wait, I could probably like deadlift over 500 pounds, which is something that I never thought I'd be able to do, you know, and I feel like my strength could be like, I'm starting to get to the point where I feel like I maybe could compete with cis men and maybe will in the future after that. But, definitely starting with the IATBP has given me a lot of confidence and has allowed me to actually have a goal to work towards, so I can see the fruits of the effects of my testosterone, because I've been on testosterone for 6 years now.
Nice. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
but
think,
I'm coming
I mean,
into it. That was a really long-winded
No,
answer.
that's
no,
okay.
no,
It was a good
no,
answer, I
no.
I had a
thought.
lot of feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, no. That was very perfect. That was perfect actually, and it's smoothly transitioned to our next question. But before
Hmm.
that, I just want to state that I asked this particularly quite difficult question because I also know you have, that, very particular, academic background that
Yeah.
will allow you to be able to speak on behalf on how, we really need more research on, on trans athletes in
Yes.
particular,
Hmm.
because there have been scientific research on trans people,
Hmm.
but there are not athletes, and there are not athletes of particular sports,
Yeah.
right? So, and then taking a very general trans population, a lot of times used as an excuse by some of these international sports, governing bodies, and to
Yeah.
claim that, certain people have physiological advantages and so they should be banned. I
Right.
think that is just nonsense.
When
Yeah.
there's no
So,
evidence to
There's
support
no
that,
evidence.
yeah.
Yeah.
and so just thank you so much for clearing that for us as well. And so, you talk a little bit about, this really wholesome, awesome experience, at Flambeau. Can you tell us a little bit more about, that particular powerlifting meet that you hosted this year? How
Yeah.
was that experience look like?
That was so it absolutely was inspired by the IATBP meet. Like I
Oh,
said, I really kind of felt really fired up afterwards, but I also, especially being in the space, I was like, oh, well, our gym is maybe a little bit bigger, but of a comparable size. I'm like, this is something that we could probably organize and do, and seeing y'all's leadership and how Janae was hosting the meet and everything like that. It's just like it made it feel very real and very feasible. And it was just I we decided to plan for May, because if you get later than May, then it's kind of a challenge. We're
right.
like a box style garage gym, so we're open. But we wound up having a beautiful day. About 50 people came out, and we only had wound up having 8 lifters, but seeing what it meant for those 8 lifters and just making it very open. The idea behind it was kind of a beginner's level meet, but it open to anybody of any gender.
Hmm.
So we had some trans people, we had some cis people, and it was just excitement, and it was love, and it was just camaraderie, and it was just everything that I wanted it to be, and everything that makes me excited about powerlifting, the same way it was for me at the ITBP meet. And getting to share the sport that I love with other people, and to kind of help guide as well, having some experience with competing in high school and doing those meets and competing with the IATBP. It was it was just really awesome to share that space and also get people interested about powerlifting, because
Right.
I think the big thing is that they either think it's weightlifting or they think it's scary, and that's where people get hurt, because they see all of these terrible videos of people getting injured when they're lifting heavy weights, and being able to come at it from a nuanced perspective and show people how it can be done safely, show people what the right technique and procedures are to ensuring safety throughout this, is it lowers the barrier of entry, and makes people more likely to compete and do other things like that in the future, and just also train powerlifting.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
now
that's
you know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. You first.
I was just gonna say, now you know what it's like for us, because that was for a while, a couple of years, we had 3 to 5 maybe athletes showing up to our
Yeah.
powerlifting meet every year. And it's like, man, why keep putting this on if only a couple people are gonna show up? But like when you saw how much fun they were
Hmm.
having and how much it meant to them,
Hmm.
it was like, man, we have to do this
Yeah.
again next year. Like we have
Exactly.
to.
Exactly. And I think it's
So
just it's a matter of like getting more people interested in getting, like, I remember after the Sunday after the competition, I went to a coffee shop in Atlanta, and the barista was trans, and I had brought it up. He was like, "Oh, I didn't even know that it was a thing. I totally would have done that." You know what I mean? And so it becomes a challenge. And also, I'm like, I got to firsthand experience what marketing, not marketing, but like advertising and trying to get spark interest in
it's
that
tough.
was like,
Yeah,
especially it's hard,
it's hard.
especially when you're we had the advantage of, like, I had the advantage of being able to be local to the area and try to attract people from around here. But when we're trying to, on at least in the United States or on a global stage, to try and get more people into this competition, I absolutely see how that's a challenge. But I think that it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And we got to, because of exactly what you're saying, because of how much it means to the people who participate in it, about this space being possible. It's this light in the middle of this huge cloudy, that feels really daunting by being a trans athlete right now. And so we need to have more of the brightness. And I hope that we can inspire other, organizations, other sports to do something similar, and get to the point where they can't ignore us anymore. They can't say that we're not capable anymore. They can't say that there's not enough trans athletes to do data, because no, here we are,
Right. Yeah. Then that absolutely aligns with one of our missions, is to kind of set the standard, or be an example of like, oh, actually you can include everybody and still have competitions be fair and competitive and affirming. Like, you don't need to come up with these stories that were so different that you can't even include us in your events.
Yeah,
so,
it's ridiculous. And like especially from I think we transmasculine athletes have a little bit of an advantage as far as not being seen as much of a threat. So which I don't agree with as far as like a principle and everything, but I think that, for example, if I were to go and just compete at a USAPL meet and I didn't say anything, I probably wouldn't, unless I was to be very vocal about it, it would kind of fly under the radar. And that's not necessarily the route that I want to take, but I think that it would go to demonstrate that it's really not that big of a deal. And there probably are plenty of athletes that do go that route and just, like, hey, like, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to compete, but they're competing with fear. And I can't imagine like being on a meet day and, being nervous and anxious about having to do my list, and also have to worry about whether or not, I'm going to be accepted by my peers, or, face any consequences, or be stripped of a title because they found out that I was trans and thought that I wasn't deserving of it,
Absolutely.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I just want to go back a little bit when you just slightly.
Sorry, we like went off tangent there. We'll pull back.
Well, it's more like a follow-up questions, right? So, like last time in our conference, in our last fireside chat, we spent a lot of time, thinking, with our guests, about inclusivity. So, your powerlifting meet also talks about, have this title, all-inclusive powerlifting, right? And you slightly mentioned a little bit about, how all genders of people, could actually join, the powerlifting meets that you host. I'm just curious about how that's part of my research too. Like, I'm curious about how do you categorize athletes at your meet on that day?
So I wound up deciding it was a collaborative effort. For the athletes that I especially the people who are members at the gym, I was asking them a lot of questions as I was, making the rule book and trying to figure out the categories and everything. And I really wanted it to be a collaborative experience, especially since it was small and I had the ability to do that. But it wound up, I think my plan was, if X amount of people that were trans wanted to do it, that I essentially asked if we wanted to have just like masculine, feminine, and gender nonconforming, or if we wanted to branch off into having trans masculine, trans feminine divisions if we had enough people. And there was mix. A lot of people weren't too gung-ho about one or the other. And with the number of people who wound up competing, we wound up just sticking to the masculine, the feminine, and the gender nonconforming categories. And one of the things throughout that process of signing up and registering for the meet, and also I think I had like a survey like gauging interest before, is the understanding that, hey, if I'm in the masculine or feminine division, I might be competing against a trans person, or I might be competing against a cis person. Are you okay with that? And if you aren't okay with that, we do have the gender nonconforming option. And it worked well. The cis people, especially people who are already queer and already, allies in ways, are on the same team that, we should be able to compete together. And I think demonstrating that there is a lot less of an issue than people like to make it out to be, like the instances where, team members, cis team members are uncomfortable with having a trans person on the team are actually a lot less seldom than the success stories where it's like, oh, well, there is a trans person on the team and we don't care, they're one of us, like, and I'm glad that it wound up being that way, because we did just have the masculine, feminine, and gender nonconforming categories, and it worked. And I think that even on the same scale, or on a larger scale, that it would still work. And it's all about just, consent and understanding what the implications of being in a certain category are. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. You know what I mean? Like, if that's like, oh, well, I wouldn't be comfortable competing against a trans person. Cool. Then this isn't the meet for you. But it's showing that a lot more people are comfortable with competing alongside trans people than what can be made out to be.
That's really interesting, right? Because like, for example, IATBP is like very focused on trans, and then non-binary folks, right? So they, we kind of divide those divisions according to like maybe how trans and gender non-conforming or non people think of themselves, in a sense, or envision themselves in a in a particular gender division. But it seems like you're even though you're adopting very similarly, in terms of the name of the division and the nature of it, it actually could, you actually show that it can be more encompassing, right, to like cis folks as well. And I think that's a very interesting observation, I guess. Yeah, I think that's, I'm it's just in general very curious, right? So, do you have any subdivisions in terms of like weight classes in each of the mass and fem divisions?
This time we didn't do any divisions by weight class. At the end of the meet after our awards ceremony, while I had everybody's ears, I asked if we like the competitive categories that we're in, or if next year, because that's another argument that some people who are for trans people in sports and just sports reform and competition in general have brought up before, is let's just take away gender completely and make it all weight class, which to a certain extent I think could work. It does get fuzzy. So ours, we didn't wind up subdividing by weight class, but we did use the Wilks coefficient. And I actually was inspired by you all as far as the gender nonconforming to use the male and the female score combined average. It seems like it just makes the most sense. But anybody in the masculine division got the male coefficient, anybody in the feminine got the female coefficient, and it worked out. I think it made the results made sense. You know what I mean? Even though there was kind of a splay in there was a wide variety of people in different weight classes, I think that when it boiled down to it, the winners made sense and the numbers made sense, So I think we would have to be both. In my opinion, I think the IATBP would probably have to have bigger events, and this would have to be a lot bigger for us to need it as, or maybe even just like a lighter weight and a heavier weight sort of category. Maybe like starting with smaller subdivisions rather than like breaking up to how the big organizations have right now, just to keep the competition. Because that's the main thing that is our challenge right now, is having enough people to make it competitive. That's why it was so exciting last year with 12 of us to be. It was like, that's a perfect bout, and we were able to compete against each other and place and have more than just like a first, second, third, which was really exciting. So I think it's something that's just evolving, and it's just a trial and error thing.
Yeah,
we
we have
it out
it
and we'll figure out
similarly.
what works best for everybody.
Yeah, we have it similarly where like we technically have the weight classes set up in the handbook if we have enough people that we need the weight class breakup. But we just don't have enough athletes at any given competition usually to actually need to, because we already have all the different gender divisions. There's usually only like 2 to 4 people in each category, maybe. So it's just there's no point really in breaking up people by weight class after that.
Exactly, because then we just have like
then who are you competing against?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're taking the right approach with it. And it's good that y'all have like
Yeah.
do you have like a number that y'all are like what's the okay, if I have X amount of lifters, then we're gonna implement weight classes. Do y'all have that set, or is it just kind of a play it by ear thing?
So, like the way we've done it, because we have had enough bodybuilders at a bodybuilding competition to need to break up
Yeah.
like middle, lightweight, and heavyweight. And usually the way it goes is if one division fills up to the point where we hit a certain number, then we break up that division by weight class. But the other
Just that
divisions,
division. Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
basically, yeah.
Cool.
So it'll probably be the same for powerlifting if we ever get to
Yeah.
that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sweet.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm very glad that you actually were like, inspired so
Yeah,
much by,
I'm kind
you
of
know.
honored.
Yes, you should be. You should be. And I can't wait
Yeah.
to bring all these people and show how many other people that y'all have also inspired to do this too. Because I mean, I feel it. We need more mentorship within our community. You know what I mean? I would not be here right now, and I probably wouldn't have made the decision after 2 years of college to just screw it. I'm just going to study the thing that I like to do. If I didn't see the example of, for example, Dylan, the owner of the gym that I work at, doing the thing, being a trans man, owning a business, creating a community, and showing that this is possible and that we're here and we're not going to go anywhere. And the IATBP being around for as long as it has, like, showing that resilience is inspiring to the new generation of trans folk that are coming along and the generation of trans folk that have already been here but haven't felt like they've had the space yet. And so the being that not role model but inspiration and mentorship, I think is just part of how we keep ourselves together and we keep ourselves moving and growing.
Yeah, that makes very much sense. And I think what you have just mentioned, demonstrates, this, one of our major like interests, like both me and Nat were actually, when we were brainstorming, we were so interested in, all the different roles that you're embodying, right? So because you were an athlete with us last year, that inspires you to actually, create and become an organizer, right, of your own powerlifting meet. We know you're also a coach yourself. So do you see that all these different roles complementing one another? And do you have a favorite role
Yeah.
among all these different roles?
They definitely complement each other. So I have one more role that I'm also a Starbucks barista. So I work at the gym and at Starbucks right now, but I'm really excited because I'm planning on leaving the company later this year. That way I can put more of my energy and focus more on this and just growing and even maybe putting on even more hats that are in the similar vein, because this is just so much of what I love, and I love getting to do a job that uses my degree and also that brings me so much joy and allows me to do the thing that I'm passionate about. I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite, but I love being a coach. It is something that allows me to think about myself in a different way and think about my own training in a different way, but also getting to inspire other people and connect with other people and hear their story and hear where they're coming from and hear, certain like misinformation that's been out there and being able to kind of quash that and to help people build confidence in themselves the way that powerlifting has been able to build confidence in for me. So I love our community, and our members are just so amazing and so awesome and just so welcoming. Like, the space that we have is just incredible and so special, and I'm just so happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, we are asking. I mean, I'm particularly interested in all
Hmm.
these different multiple roles because I feel like I'm also like, undertaking all these different roles, right? I'm also an
Hmm.
athlete myself. I'm a coach myself, and also, I'm helping IATBP organizing competition as well. So in a lot of ways, we're pretty much similar, in
Hmm.
terms of embodying those different roles. I do think that, coaching among all these roles for me, is the most inspiring,
Yeah.
right? Being able to see other, your athletes, your students, being able to grow, right? Not necessarily towards the direction you necessarily want them to be,
Mm.
but then they're able to find their way and then find their passion. in the things that you are also passionate about. And so I think that for me gives me that achievement that being an athlete
Yeah,
cannot. I mean, being an
it's
athlete is,
fulfilling. It's fulfilling in a different way, you know? Yeah. But I love being an
yes.
athlete too, and I think like this, getting to train for this meet is kind of like the regrounding. I'm like, okay, yes, like I'm training them, but I'm also training myself too, you know, and getting to embody that athlete role that I feel like I've been missing out on for a long time, and I'm happy to be a part of again.
Yeah. And that's so amazing because you are at the same time an athlete and a coach in
Hmm.
this, competing with us.
Hmm.
And I always hope that, one day I can bring my own athletes to compete with me
Hmm.
on the same stage. I think that should,
Yes.
I envision it's going to be an amazing feeling. You're
Hmm.
both nervous for yourself, but you're nervous for for your students as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I actually wanted to know on that in that vein, like how
Yeah.
are you feeling about competing against your students? Because that's
So
got to be an
that
interesting
was
feeling.
the first thing. So we've kind of we've come together as like a barbell club, like we're calling it Flambeaux Barbell Club. We've got 10 or 11 members in it. Not all of them are going to be compete. I think five. If I'm counting myself, then six people are going to be going to the IATBP with me. Dylan's going to be competing in the bodybuilding. The others are going to be competing in powerlifting. But at the very beginning, whenever we were having like an interest meeting for like starting the club and seeing what everybody wanted to do, one of the very first things that I asked is how they felt about that, you know, as far as me being the coach and also like I am going to have like Masc II competitors, so they are going to be competing against me. And the response was overwhelmingly is if you think you can take that on, then like, you know, as long as that is not too much for you, they were telling me that they're comfortable with it and that they don't mind. Um, I I'm not like super gung ho on winning. I'm not gonna care if I don't win. I would love it if one of my guys won instead or if somebody else won. It really it's just like a non. I want to go for the experience, and I think everybody else feels similarly as far as like in the club getting to either do it for the first time or the second time if they did it for the lift up meet. Um, I think it's just going to be a really good experience. It is going to be a little bit weird, you know, having to kind of shift roles and this because you know as powerlifters we have to like brood and get mentally ready when we're warming up, and you know it's a very mental preparation sort of experience. So I don't know. I guess this is going to be a test run to see how that goes. I might wind up stepping back and being just a coach next year, or just I can't see myself being just an athlete at this point, you know. But you know, we'll see what happens. I'll be happy either way. I love doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we probably have to invite you back later
Yeah.
after you had that experience and
Yeah.
to see like because I think it's a very challenging role, right?
Hmm.
Because you have to be both. And as you said, you need to get to your headspace when you lift your
Yeah.
own weights, but
Yeah.
then you also have to take care of, your other lifters as well.
Hmm.
So I envision it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to, pick one or the other at the end,
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah.
But, we are just very excited that you're bringing your lifters to
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
IATBP. And we know that, of course, you are planning to come to the IATBP for I believe it's your next upcoming competition, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So do you have any more like future competitive? I mean, after the IATBP, do you have any other like, competitive kind of plans that, you kind of lightly mentioned that you might consider competing in the men's division in
Hmm.
the future, in the maybe far
Hmm.
future? Are you looking into like other potential like powerlifting meets like IATBP where they also organizes more inclusively in terms of like including trans and also gender non-conforming folks?
Hmm. So, because it's actually kind of a 50-50 split of trans and cis athletes in my barbell club. I, I have been doing a little bit more research as far as finding competitions that they'd be able to compete into, but also looking into different organizations that do have more accepting things. Especially, haven't really been participating too much, but in the Discord group chat since the competition, we were all really excited and talking all the time, but no, not so much. But seeing other lifters from the IATBP competing at other meets, I was like, oh wait, like this is possible. You know, I felt especially like seeing USAPL as kind of like the main alternate because they have the most meets, they have the most lifters and the most divisions and the most locations that they do stuff. But there are also like the IPF and then some other smaller organizations, I think like Powerlifting Syndicate and something like that. They all quote the International Olympic Committee's decision on therapeutic use exemption for hormones. The issue with that, especially since we didn't see any trans athletes in the Olympics, is that all the individual sports have their own
Right.
decisions to be made with the International Olympic Committee's decision. But it seems like, at least in America, there are several other organizations that are adhering to that, and that's something that I would be able to do. And I would love to be at a competition where my cis and trans athletes and myself would be able to compete all in the same place. So right now we're looking at, and it sucks because our cis members of the Barbell Club, most of them are going to be coming with us to support to see what the event is like and what a powerlifting competition looks like. But there is a Louisiana State Open with the IPF that's happening on November 23rd.
Oh,
So
get out.
it is on the same day, and I was like, yeah, I was like, look, I was
We
like,
did not do that
I
on
can walk
purpose,
up
I
to.
swear.
No, I know. It's like so obscure. It's just like it just happened. And people are trying to get things done while it's cool and before Thanksgiving starts. Like it's just a busy weekend. But no, I do. I want to. Besides competing with the IATBP again, I at least once, I want to compete in another division against cis men. See how I wind up faring. You know, I think that if um, especially with training with the team and getting to do another cycle of the barbell club and more strength training and really compounding upon each other because kind of shifted more toward the coaching and getting everything together role this year than I have been focused on training necessarily. I'm training right now for the competition, but you know what I mean? Putting some really serious and long work into it and being intentional and having a different um, pool of people to compete against, I think would be really cool. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, we are also very excited to have you here and,
Yeah.
to bring a bunch of people here, which we desperately need.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and we need to build also that kind of community. And I think, powerlifting is a very good sport in that sense, right? To build that sense of community, sense of belonging. And, I mean, as a bodybuilder myself, I always look up to how powerlifters were able to form that really intimate, but also respectful space for each other.
Yeah.
So I think that is something that, I think, really, any bodybuilders here,
Hmm.
we have to come together in some way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and then talking about, you mentioned a lot about, the joy of coaching itself. And you're also kind of, I would think you would consider yourself as a, kind of a newer coach,
Hmm.
coming in, learning to coach and, learning to put your own experience as an athlete, right, into your coaching itself. So do you see like challenges being a coach so far? And what do you plan to, hopefully to achieve in the future, maybe bettering yourself as a coach in the future?
I definitely, so as far as challenges, I've seen myself grow so much as a coach, because it's different, especially like coming from an academic setting, learning this stuff, like knowing things in theory and also being able to convey those ideas to other people. Um, but I've seen the growth in my coaching become much more individualized, which I think it just has to be because everybody takes different cues. People like external cues or internal cues, or maybe can connect more with a certain way of, cue than another, and having different experiences. And I've gotten a lot of help from Dylan and Missy to see their different style of coaching and kind of blending that to become my own. And I think that it's never going to stop. I'm never going to stop growing and getting better because I know that there's always going to be room for improvement. And I'm going to meet somebody else that challenges me in a different way or has a certain condition or a certain injury or has been through certain rehabilitation that needs to have a specialized approach. And that helps me for the next person. It's just a continuing of perfecting the craft and getting better and better at it. But I feel like this past year, after having a year of, kind of wobbly deer walking and coaching and getting my feet wet and like learning how to explain things, I feel really confident in my coaching. And I and also I've been doing it long enough with a lot of the same members to see how they've benefited from it. Even if it's just like lower depth on a squat, or just like, hey, you told me this cue about my feet and it's changed it. Now I actually do like deadlifting, or I was so scared because I thought my back was going to get hurt. Stuff like that. Getting to change people's perception and change people's relationships with their body is something that I think can only grow and develop. I think it's always going to be changing, and I hope to always continue to improve.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, I myself as a coach, I also kind of agree, because a lot of our, like, all these different programs that trains you to be a coach, right? A lot of times I don't think they are like emphasizing enough about how individual bodies are just so different,
Exactly.
right? And so, like, and for bodybuilding, we also have to take care everyone's responses to nutrition, right? To training, and there, and supplements and all this stuff, right? So, and I think, there is a general misunderstanding that, you can just, especially powerlifting, I just give you, all these standardized, whatever, like sets and reps and weights, and then you can just do it on your own. And you don't really need a coach doing that. You can use an app to do it right now.
Yeah.
Right. So I do see, like, you mentioned about this very important aspect of being, really a hands-on coach that, helps you go through, the process itself. And, individualizing their program is so important. And, I think when you are more into coaching, the longer that you are in, I think, another question that you will start probably asking yourself with, do I want to, what are the type of lifters that I want to, or population of lifters that I want to help, in general. Are you better in being a coach that teaches people who know nothing to something? Or are you better in like coaching people who are already, kind of know something, but you twisted this and that little thing to help them to become more professionalized?
That's a good question.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And especially like finishing my kinesiology degree, like you have to think about what your goal population is to work with. Especially when you're talking about becoming more specialized, and I think that that's important. But I'm at a really big advantage with being at this gym in particular, because we are such a hugely diverse population, in age and gender, everything. And I've gotten to work with everybody. There's lifters on my barbell team that are in their 50s and 60s, and I have other guys that are in their 20s, and I have people that have come from no experience at all, to having some. It's been a little bit of everything, especially like when somebody walks in for a trial class, like, building up that rapport. A lot of the times it's I've never touched a weight in my life. Sometimes it's I've had this experience, or I've done these programs. People come in from everywhere. And so I think that I've gotten to, I would consider myself pretty well rounded, and I obviously always have room to grow and specialize. I don't know if I have one particular population that I'm interested in, although I do really, really enjoy getting to build the confidence and quell the worries from older lifters and older people who are trying to be active, because it's just so beneficial for your ongoing mobility and longevity and just livelihood, and just feeling good in your body, especially at an older age. And this stuff is important, and this stuff does help you get stronger. If we start you off and progressively bring up the intensity and bring up the weight, there's a lot lower risk of injury than to just try and do it on your own and put something too heavy and tweak it. It's like, especially like older people who have lifted before, like there's almost always like a horror story to go along with it. That's why like one of the first things I ask from people is just like if we're doing a squat or a deadlift, I'm like, what are your feelings about it? You know, like what is your do you have any kind of, I don't want to say trauma, but like just past experience that left either that lift in particular or lifting in general with a bad taste in your mouth that you're scared to do it. And if people are scared to do it and think that it's gonna hurt them more than it helps them, then it winds up hurting them rather than helping them later down the line.
Right.
So that part is really gratifying to me, but I do really like working just with all populations.
That's very interesting that you pick, the elderly population, which is
Hmm.
typically we don't really associate them with powerlifting, which is
Hmm.
a strength sport, right?
They
Because
got some strong old
That's
people.
true.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, that's what I'm saying. My
yeah.
parents, I never was able to persuade them
Mm.
to do like, more strength stuff, which I think is very beneficial to like
Mm.
bone
It is
It is.
very
density, or
beneficial.
Yeah,
flexibility and everything.
yeah,
But they end up choose Tai Chi, which is,
yeah,
reasonably a good
yeah.
sport.
You know.
But it's just a very different, right? And I don't
Hmm.
think Tai Chi helps with like bone density. I
Yeah,
don't know, maybe, probably
maybe
not.
some.
But
It's definitely better than nothing at all.
Yeah,
yes.
moving is better than nothing at all, but nothing
Exactly.
can replace like just lifting weights
Hmm.
to allow you to sustain the strength to get through your activities of
Hmm.
daily living, like
Hmm.
getting up and out of a chair on your own independently, things
Yep.
like that as you age. Like lifting is going to help you with
Yeah.
that
Surviving
more than
a
almost
fall,
anything else.
like
Yes, exactly. Getting up after a fall.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So
Mm.
I'm very fortunate to be in the line of work and the line of fitness that actually does have like I don't feel like I'm selling something that people don't need. You know what I
Right.
mean? I feel
Mm.
like I'm very invested in the idea that and the truth that resistance training of anybody for any age is so incredibly beneficial. Whether it's
Mm.
them doing it as powerlifting or
Hmm.
just doing some stuff with bands at home, like
Right.
And I suddenly realized that, the slogan on my t-shirt
hmm
today actually love all athletes, right? So
hmm
it's like definitely
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
matches what you're just saying.
I noticed that
yeah,
both of your shirts when
yeah,
we logged on
yeah.
were kind of similar. I felt out of the loop a little
Oh,
bit.
sorry, you didn't get the memo.
No, apparently it was Pride
Yes,
T-shirt day. I didn't realize.
I know. Like this just
Yes.
came in right after the Olympics ended, but I was just like watching it, and it's just like watching the Olympics is just so inspiring
It
because it's
is.
just like it's so cool to see everybody doing what they love, and especially everybody of all kinds of different bodies and ages, and just from everywhere, just doing the thing that they love and being so good at it. It's
Yeah.
just it's so inspiring. It really got me fired up with for the training that we have and for the competition. I'm just really excited.
And
Awesome.
with that fire, are you planning to organize more powerlifting meets at the gym?
Oh yeah.
And if so, like when do you plan to do it? Is it more like an annual thing, or do you want to do it more like more frequently?
I definitely, so the one we for sure have in the books is that we're definitely going to do the lift up competition again, probably in April, just to play it safe with Louisiana weather. But a lot of people were like, well, why don't we just do it more than once a year? I was like, well, that's a good point too. So I think that there's definitely potential for to have more than one meet. We'll see how April goes and if more people are interested or if it's a huge turnout, maybe we have to divvy it up into 2 days or something like that. Um, I definitely would love to have more than one meet going on because that was just so much fun. Like we had Dylan's parents came and they were like making fancy grilled cheeses and we were selling
Oh.
concessions and stuff and just having an awesome time just hanging out together and lifting. So I'd love to do more again too.
Yeah, I
That's
think
good to hear.
that's also a great wrap up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
For our conversation
Hmm.
because I'm also mindful of our
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
and but I just want to express my deepest gratitude, of what you're doing and what you have. You also inspired us, a lot
Yeah.
in terms of what you have achieved. because, it shows us, our own effort of maintaining and, hosting IATBP competition. Even though each year we have all the different kinds of challenges, you made us feel like it's worth it, because if we can inspire one person to do, to host their own meets, and to inspire more people, I think that kind of achieve what we have always been wanting to do, as, speaking on behalf of the IATBP itself. So we are just very deeply grateful for what you have done, and being an athlete, supporting us along the way, and also bringing more athletes or as well,
I know
right,
that,
to support.
especially hosting a meet, I was like, at the end of the day, it's the number of people you got competing. I'm like, I'm
Right.
glad that we got so much support, but like, y'all come lift. Like,
Yes, exactly. So we're just very grateful for, because you are passionate about what you do. So, and I always believe that if you are passionate in something, you will always eventually do well on it. So we really look forward to, your multiple roles and dual roles as a coach and an athlete. And we will definitely, come back to you and ask you of your experience later on that. But, thank you so much again for joining us in this conversation. And we wish you all your success for upcoming April, powerlifting meet at Louisiana. And I will just pass to Nat to see if there is. Do you have any questions from the audience and stuff?
We did have one question pop up, but it wasn't for Nate, but I'm gonna go ahead and answer it because it's just in case anybody here is like watching has the same question. Someone asked, "Can you tell us what the qualifications are to compete in your competitions?" So only qualification, be trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, whatever. That's it basically. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, doesn't matter if you've never competed before. If you're curious about the rules in terms of like what equipment is allowed or anything like that, the handbook has all the information on just the general rules and requirements so that you don't get there and like you don't have the right equipment or you have the wrong equipment or something and then you can't compete or something. Although we're usually pretty good about finding something last minute if you don't have the right equipment. The handbook link is going to be in our bio. So if you go to our Instagram account and you click the link in the bio and scroll down, it's right there, IATBP Athletes Handbook. And everything you're going to want to know is in there. But other than that, like, there's no qualifications to compete with us. You just show up and just join. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and on my side, I do have a question from, from an audience. Like, that question is like, because of your, you being an athlete and also a coach, will you have any like powerlifting advice for a lifter? I assume this one is like this person is, maybe planning to first compete. So do you have any advice for for a beginner lifter, in terms of like joining and competing at a powerlifting meet?
So, practical advice for competition: know your calls and get your depth and all the technical stuff. Practice that like crazy before, because whenever you go up, and I was telling this to the Barbell Club on Saturday when we had a meeting, you are just so full of adrenaline. You just want everything to be muscle memory. You want to stick to your routine. You want to know what you're listening for, and you know that you're going to have the right connection. You're not bringing up your head or anything on bench. Just check all your boxes and train like that. One of the my favorite things that my coach from high school told me was, if you lift lightweight like it's heavy, you'll lift heavyweight like it's light. And training like that will definitely add to ensuring that all of the lifts that you are strong enough to lift will count. Make your lifts count. That's the big thing. As far as just starting off, just acknowledging that powerlifting is for anybody. Anybody can do this. And you don't have to, like you were saying, like no prerequisites or anything like that. You can start off from nothing and just knowing the basic lifts. I think that it is so much fun to just try if you're interested in weightlifting, or if you just think it's cool to just go out on a limb, play around with it, go in a competition, especially like the IATBP is a super beginner friendly competition. And it's going to be fun. And if it's for you, you'll know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Awesome. Well, is that it? Is that all you have, Sifan, over there?
Yes, that's from my side. I think we actually cover a lot
I
of,
think so too.
yes, and I think that is it's good timing too. I mean,
Hmm.
it's perfect timing, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, thank you so much for, joining us today and having this very fruitful conversation with us. We get to know more about your journey, but also we get to know more about, your very personal experiences, right? Being, embodying those different roles that I think each role itself is a challenge.
Hmm.
So you manage to do all these roles and then you just love it. That's the kind of that's the kind of joy and attitude that we really love, right?
Yeah.
To
Hmm.
see, in general in our community because of all these, difficulties, just being trans and just being yourself,
Mhm.
right? Outside. I think being able to build a very strong sense of community in a sense of just sense of love and joy, and then that's very important. So thank you, really, thank you for that. And I think as a closing, unless Nat, you want to do a closing, I would just say, again, join us on our IATBP powerlifting and bodybuilding competition,
Mhm.
which will be on November 23rd. And join us as a member too, even though you might not be thinking about competing. If you want to support us, support our cause, please also join us as a member, and all the details of being a member and registering for the competition will be and are at our IATBP official Instagram page,
Mhm.
and as well as on our website.
Mhm. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you
Awesome.
both so much for your
Thank
time.
y'all so much for having
Um,
me.
yeah, oh God, we're so honored. We're so glad that you made the time to sit down with us and be so honest and authentic. It really means a lot, and it makes the conversation just way more interesting too. So thank you. And thanks to everybody in the audience who stuck around for the full hour. Y'all are incredible. And hopefully I'll see everybody next time on the next Fireside Chat in a couple
Cool.
weeks.
Oh, yes. And also, our fireside chats will be uploaded. The whole
Oh yeah.
conversation will be also uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Yes.
So, again, go to our IATBP official website, a website, and also on Instagram to, find out the link of the YouTube video if you miss it, or if you miss parts of it, or if you want to visit some parts of it.
Yes.
So, once again,
They're
just
all
want to
uploaded on YouTube,
Cool.
so they're all there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to thank Nate again and thank Nat as well for having this very lovely conversation. And we shall see you all in our next fireside chat.
Yes, and we'll see Nate in November
See you in
in
Atlanta.
Atlanta. All
See you
right.
all
Have a
and
good
thank you
day,
so
y'all.
much. Have a
Yeah.
good day. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.